How's she going? Mike here. Welcome back to Grampie's workshop. Thanks a lot for dropping in. You know you make my day brighter when you stop by the shop, so thanks a million for that. Today is kind of a different little video I've got scheduled. The other night I was sitting around and I was thinking about, working on these boxes that I'm going to be putting on this big long shelf that's above my bench, my workbench here. And I thought, what might be a good idea for a video would be sort of kind of lay out and describe a little bit the process that I personally go through before I come up with making a project. So that's what we're going to do today. We're just going to talk about, the thought process and the sort of the planning that goes into some of the projects I do around the camp here. So when I come up with the idea to make a project, I've already done a lot of thinking about it, usually. Not all projects, but some of them. And I'm not trying to boast or be braggart about, how wise or sage I am at coming up with projects, but that's just my nature, that I'm not going to make something unless I have a pretty good idea of what I'm aiming for. So for example, I'm going to talk today about making boxes to put on my long shelf up here. So I already have a prototype, I guess you'd call it, box made up here. Before I talk about the actual box itself, I want to talk about the dimensions. And again, when I'm thinking about what I'm going to make, it's like size, like what size am I going to make it? How big should it be? What am I going to put in there? Well, I don't know really what all I'm going to put in there. So I'd like to make it as big as I can, basically, without it being like humongous. So since my shelf was 12 inches deep, I said, how deep would the box have to be? Well, I don't want the box so deep that there's a danger of it tipping and falling off the shelf. So I figured, maybe 14 inches, 2-inch overhang, that wouldn't be so bad, 14 inches deep. So that's how I come up with that dimension, 14 inches. So then, how high am I going to make the bench, or the box, how high? Let me see, if I measure between that ceiling joist and the top of the shelf, it's 15 inches. So my box, the box that I put up there can't be 15 inches tall or they'd never fit in there. So I was thinking I'll make them 14 inches. So I was all set to go with 14 inches, but then I'm thinking, to put the box up there, because the shelf is up high and I'm down low, I'm going to angle the box to slide it in. So if you angle the box, and if the box is 14 inches high and I've only 15 inches of clearance, chances are the back of the box is going to hit here in the ceiling and I'm going to struggle to get the box in place. And if the box is heavy, because I'm not sure what's going to go in these boxes, if the box is heavy, then that could be a disaster. I could drop the box, could hurt me, whatever, right? So then I thought, well, instead of making them 14 inches, maybe I'll make them 13 inches. And I thought, well, that's, 13 inches, that's kind of an oddball size. So now when you come up with, I'm going to cut these out of 1/2-inch plywood. So I have a 4x8 sheet of 1/2-inch plywood. If I were to make the box 13 inches tall, I'm going to waste a lot of plywood. So I come up with, I'm going to make them 12 inches tall. That way, out of each 4x8 sheet of plywood that I have, I can get 4 8-foot lengths of 12-inch wide stock to make my boxes. So I decided, 12 inches, that's not bad. That's going to make it easy to get the box in and out of the shelf from down below, and it's going to make good use of my plywood. So, those are the sort of thoughts that go through my head. The other thing is, how wide am I going to make the box? Well, if you can see up here, I have these blue uprights here, supports for the shelf, and they have to be there or the shelf will fall down, right? And I don't want the shelf to fall down. So the other thing I did was I measured from this upright to that upright and found out what that distance was. I think this one is 32 inches. I'm not sure, but I can check that. But anyway, 32 inches. So I said if I made a box, say 31 inches wide, then it would fit between these uprights. 31 inches wide, 14 inches deep, 12 inches high. That would be a nice big box, Put a lot of stuff in it. But then the box gets pretty heavy. And I come back to this issue of it's maybe unsafe now to start maneuvering that box all by myself down here. So I said, all right, I'll split that distance in half and I'll make 2 boxes to put in there. So because the distance is 32 inches, I'm going to put 2 boxes in there. 16 inches is the middle. I thought, well, maybe 15 inches, that only gives me a 1/2-inch clearance for each box. So I thought, well, no, I'm going to make the box 14 inches wide, and then it would slide in there pretty good. Both boxes, I have lots of space, for wiggling and maneuvering. So I decided these boxes were going to be 14 inches. But then when I measured the other openings, I tried to make them all the same, but they're not. So that means each opening now is going to have a custom set of boxes for it. And what I decided to do was I measure from this post to this post and then take 3 inches off that distance and then split that distance in 2, and that's going to be the width of my boxes. Give me some gap between them. So that's the sort of process I go through when I'm trying to come up with a design for the project. So I've gone through this process of deciding basically how big my boxes are going to be, right? So now it comes down to the prototype I made had a box joint on it. Box joint is nice. It's a good, strong joint. What I like about the box joint is you don't need to reinforce the corner in any way. So like some boxes I made, the fronts and the sides come together like this, but then they had to put a piece in the corner to support that so that it would be strong. Well, that piece ended up taking some real estate inside the box. Not a lot, but still some. And I wanted to minimize that. So I said the box joint is the way to go. Plus, I said I'd like to make a box joint. Like I never made box joints before. So, you know, that comes into play too when I'm designing projects. You know, I'd like to try something different, or, you know, if I come upon something like I have really good luck to make it and it's fairly easy to make, then I'll go with that. But I was wanting to expand my horizons a little bit to make a box joint. So I decided I'm going to make box joints. So then I made this prototype box and I used my old dado stack to set up to make that, and I had to figure out then how to make a box joint jig. And that's not hard to do because there's tons and tons of examples of box joint jigs on YouTube. So that wasn't really a big problem for me to overcome to make my box joint jig. But then as I was cutting it out, I was thinking I'm only using 1/2 inch material, and you know, to make 1/2 inch box joints on a 12-inch high box, you know, that's, what is that, six cuts per side, and there's 4 sides, so that's 24 cuts I'm going to have to make. So, you know, that's a lot. So then I'm thinking maybe I should just make half lap joints, or rabbet out the edges and make joint like a rabbet joint. That would be easier, but I said no, that's not what I want to do. I want to make a box joint. So now I'm thinking I'm going to make box joints, but I'm going to make the box joints a little wider. I'm going to see how wide I can make my dado stack. I think it'll only go to like maybe 7/8 of an inch. So maybe I'll make 7/8 inch fingers for the box joint. So, you know, that's another thought that goes through your head. The first box I made had 1/2 inch box joints. It fit together not bad. Really, really good and solid. There's no 2 ways about it, especially when you put the glue on the joint. But, you know, does it really need to be that solid? Like, I'm not going to store an anchor up there, you know. So I'm going to make the joints wider if I can. That means a couple of things. It means less cutting with the dado and maybe easier assembly, trying to get the finger joints, the fingers to all line up. So, you know, things like that. So that's another thing that I consider when I'm making a project. What am I going to put in the bottom? If I put 1/2 inch material in the bottom, you know, that's good, but I'm running low on 1/2 inch material. I get lots of 1/4 inch stuff, 1/8 inch stuff materials. So does the bottom of the box really need to be 1/2 inch? I don't know if it does or doesn't. So when I made my drawers, I put the bottoms in. They were 3/16, that 3/16 Luan. The 3/16 certainly holding everything I can think of that needs to get put in these drawers. So these boxes are not going to be that big. So I'm thinking maybe I can use 3/16 Luan for bottoms. So that's another consideration I'm going to have. You know, ideally you would make the bottom say at a 1/2 inch plywood, but I don't have a lot, so you got to come up with another plan. And when you come up with that other plan of the material you're going to use, then that changes the way you're going to make the cuts on the pieces of, in this case, of the box when you try to put it together. So you have to bear that in mind too when you're coming up with your design. So I'd also like to put tops on the boxes. So if I put a top on the box, that'll definitely keep the dust and dirt out of the box. I had to come up then with an idea. What can I use to put a top in the box? So I'm thinking what I'm going to do now is definitely take some of the 3/16 Luan or masonite that I have kicking around, something like that, and put a dado around the edge of the top of the box so that I can slide the top in and out. So I'll be able to take the box down off the shelf, slide the top off, see what's in the box. When I'm finished, slide the top back in, put the box back up on the shelf. So another thing that I'm always aware of when I'm planning a project is the cost of materials. Materials are just crazy. The cost of materials these days is just, it's crazy. So I save everything. If you watch my channel at all, you know that I always save stuff. My shop is just cluttered with pieces and parts, and you know, rarely do I ever throw things away because of the cost of materials. So here I am going to make some boxes. I happened to buy some 1/2-inch plywood sheets when I was making the drawers on my bench. So I think I've got this sheet plus I think about another 1/2 sheet maybe available, still left over from making my drawers. But again, I'm thinking about not only this project, but I think about other projects down the road, other ideas that I might have down the road. And one of them is I have to finish the front of the shop, and I have a little bench here in front of the shop where my miter saw is. I'm going to show you. I have this bench here in the front of the shop with the miter saw station. So I'm going to be redoing this bench and probably put drawers in it. So I don't want to use up all my 1/2-inch plywood, or else I'll have to buy more. Ooh, yeah. So consequently, the thought of cost of materials is always on my mind. So anyway, I decided that I'm going to use at least one sheet of 1/2-inch plywood to make these boxes. So again, when I was figuring out the dimensions of the boxes, I thought I'm going to make the boxes 12 inches high. So with a sheet of plywood is 4 feet wide, so I'll be able to get 4 pieces 8 feet long of stock to make my boxes. The other thing too is I only have one sheet here to make my boxes, and I know there's not enough material in this sheet to make the boxes. So when I go to lay out my marks here on the sheet to cut the plywood, my thought is, first of all, I have to prioritize the box. The fronts of them have to be made with the plywood, just because I want them all to look the same, basically. That's the main reason. Secondly, then, the sides could be 1/2-inch plywood. So, you know, I'm going to lay out with that in mind. I'm going to lay out all the fronts first. Then I'll lay out the sides. And then we'll see what we have left to lay out the backs. And then go from there. So, again, when I'm planning a project, you think about the cost of the materials. You think the best way to lay something out to get the most use out of it. You want to be efficient with your cuts. But this is just the process that I go through, right? And I don't know, I find it rewarding. I was going to say interesting, but I guess it's not really that interesting, but it is rewarding when you come up with, you have an idea of what you want to do, you come up with a plan on how you can execute that idea, and then you make it, and it's rewarding when you see it finished. So those are some of the thoughts that go through my head as I get ready to do a project, when I'm dreaming up a project or thinking about a project, that I have an idea of what I want, an approximate, you know, a vision of the sizes of the boxes and how I'm going to assemble the boxes and the material I'm going to use for the boxes. Now I can go to work and lay out that plywood, make some cuts, and actually start getting material prepped to make the boxes. So, you know, that'll be in an upcoming video, but you already saw me make one box. I don't know whether you want to see me make 10 more, but anyways, we'll see what goes on there. But thanks a lot for watching. I hope you found this video kind of interesting. If not, click like and subscribe anyhow, right? Because no sense both of us being upset. Have a great week, folks. I sure hope you're having a great week wherever you are. And we'll talk to you soon.